Shalom, giving all praise to Yahweh Shem, Yahshua Bashem, Rakakudah, Shalom to the 144,000, and the rest of the elect out there, Shalom to you all. And this is going to be relatively quick. Anyway, I'm going to entitle this video, The Chat Says Israelites Were Olive-Skinned. So I asked a question to Chat GPT, are the Israelites black? Just to see what they were going to say. And they pretty much telling the truth in a roundabout way. The question of whether the ancient Israelites, as opposed to these people that call themselves the Jays, right? The question of whether the ancient Israelites were black is complex and depends on how we define black. What time period we're referring to, and what sources we use. Archaeological, you got the icons, the Russian icons of the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is in Eastern Europe and that region, which includes Russia. It says archaeological, historical, genetic, and biblical. Genetic meaning to know where you came from, where your foreparents came from. Who are they? Who was your father's father? That's going into genetics, DNA. And do you know that in Palestine and modern Israel, you can't get a DNA test? But no, they say you can, but you have to get a court order. So here in America, you can go to what is it, Ancestry.com. It used to be used to have a company. The two main companies were Ancestry and 23andMe, which that company was sold to another company. They pretty much went bankrupt and had to sell the company. So you can get in a DNA test here in America. You can't get it in the so-called land of Israel unless you go before a court and a judge grants you can go ahead and get that test. Archaeological, historical, genetic, and biblical. Ancient Israelites, ethnically and regionally, the Israelites were a Semitic people who emerged in the ancient Near East. If you go to the Near East, if you go to the Levant, if you go to the Arab world, the majority of the people out there are people that look like us. When I say us, I'm talking about so-called Negroes, Puerto Ricans, North American Indians. That's why you have, and I know this for a fact, you have Arabs that come to America, and a lot of them marry Puerto Rican women, or the women marry Puerto Rican men, because they look, the Puerto Ricans and the Dominicans and some of the other northern kingdoms, they can pass for Arabs because we all came from the Middle East, from the Levant. Particularly in the Levant. And I always mention the Levant, modern day Israel, Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. This region served as a cultural crossroads between Africa, Asia, and Europe. Africa, Asia, and Europe. Genetic and archaeological evidence suggests that ancient Israelites were closely related to other Semitic people. The Semitic, so you can understand, some Semitic, when it says Semitic person, it's anybody that stemmed from Shem, one of the sons, the youngest son of Noah. which he had 5 principal sons: Aphaxad, Lud, Elam, Ashur, and Aram, which these 5 sons, their descendants, would look like Arabs or so-called black people. Got a lot of, and when you go to the Arab world, to the Levant, to Saudi Arabia, you're going to run into Arabs with woolly hair and dark skin. But they're going to be dressed in the regalia of that region. See, when you see Arabs on TV, we call them TV Arabs, they look more Europeanized. They don't show you the darkies among the Arabs that speak fluent Arabic. Semitic people, and by the way, the small hats, the Jays, they are Semitic people. They came from that line. But when they came out, the father Esau came out. He came out looking different than his brother Jacob, his father Isaac, his mother Rebekah, Isaac's father Abraham, Sarah. They were all people of color. So when did the so-called white man come on the scene? They came on the scene when Esau was born. And these people, these Orthodox Jays, and I spoke to them. Like I said before in previous videos, I used to speak to them all the time. I worked with them, did subcontracting work. I'm talking about the what do you call it? The authentic Jews, the religious ones, not necessarily the secular ones. The orthodoxy, so you can understand. And they know the story of Jacob and Esau, and they're taught from childhood that they are the sons of Jacob. And Esau, they're a completely different nation. So when you talk to them about Jacob and Esau, they're familiar with the story. And when you tell them, you descended from Esau, they'll walk away. They don't want to talk no more. It says Semitic peoples in the region such as, let me read this again, genetic, which is DNA, and archaeological, archae meaning old, and logical, or archaeology. Ology means the study of the ancients. Archaic, that's where you get the word archaic. So genetics and archaeological evidence, things that were dug up in the Levant, which includes Israel, suggests that ancient Israelites were closely related to other Semitic people. And the Semitic people, the 5 principal sons, came out looking like Shem, which he was dark. His brother Ham, the 4 sons that came out of Ham were black, so-called black people. And Japhet were so-called black people, or are so-called black people. So if all his sons were dark people, then what color was the father? Noah. He had to be dark too. So back then there was no such thing as so-called white people. That came about when Esau came on the scene. For you brothers that's newly coming in, and sisters, Semitic people in the region, such as Canaanites, which are Hamites, Armenians, and Phoenicians, which are also Canaanites. These are all dark people. This is Arameans, which are Arab people. Their physical appearance likely reflect reflected a range of Middle Eastern traits. When you go to Palestine, matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do? Let me do this. What did the Palestinians look like 1800s? That's not what I want. What did the Palestinians look like in the (1800s)? 1800s. S. What did the Palestinians look like in the 18? What did the Palestinian people, because they give me a map, Palestinian people look like in the 1800s? Let me go to images. Let me open this up. Look at them. It's from 1819 to 1900. This person looks like a Gadite. He could look like pass for a Mexican. He can pass for a Mexican. He could pass for a Mexican or a Colombian. I'm showing you the Palestinian people during the 1800s. Let me do this here. Let me take this and let me do this. So this truth is catching up to you deceivers out there. Let me open up this one. There was a group called the Spinners, right? And I forget the two twins. They were singers in the group. One of them had passed recently. Somebody help me out, y'all, you musical brothers. He looked like one of the twins. He can pass for a Negro. This guy looks Edomized, but you can see that they're dark. This guy looks just like a Negro. He looks a little like Yaikwab, the high priest, Ariel's father. They're wearing robes. They're wearing the Arab, the Middle Eastern type garments. When they came up with during the time of the Balfour Declaration, they had to create these other people. They had to create them. Look at this. Look at that. So now let's come back over here. It said their physical appearance likely reflected a range of Middle Eastern traits, medium to olive skin tones. Olives have three colors, tones: black olives, brown olives, and green olives. And there's no such people as green people. So if they were olive skin tones of olive colored skin, they either had to be brown, dark brown, to a black. Dark hair and varied eye colors, typical of people in the Middle Eastern Mediterranean. Were the Israelites black in the modern racial sense? If by black you mean sub-Saharan Africans, in the sense, and that's what we fled to. We're not the original Africans and sub-Saharan Africans. We fled into that land, mostly before 70 AD and after 70 AD. We had communities in Africa and Egypt, Alexandria, for example. You had the Carthaginian Empire, Hannibal Barca. That was North Africa. Carthage was the city, which Carthage is Hebrew for new city. And the Romans were trying to take down Carthage and couldn't defeat the people of Carthage because of the might of them people. They were Israelites. Now what they lost was when they said they're going to go to Rome and take them down. And they couldn't take them down when you go into the history of them going over the Alps mountains. They couldn't deal with the cold in the mountains, and a lot of them died. And the reason why they could not have taken down the Romans, because the Romans had to fulfill prophecy. Read Daniel 7 and Daniel 2. Those are two main scriptures. Most scholars in genetic studies do not support the idea that ancient Israelites were sub-Saharan Africans. Right, in the beginning. But the Israelites did flee to Africa, and they mingled with the people in Africa. And they got the upper hand. A lot of these, when we got taken from West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, those areas, those were Israelites. The historians in these books will tell you that they're Africans. No. Remember, you had Israelites all throughout Africa. When during the time of the Pentecost, the biggest group of Israelites outside of Jerusalem were the Israelites of Alexandria, Egypt. Remember, Joseph and Mary fled at the command of the angel Gabriel to flee into Egypt. And people say, oh, they blended with the Africans. No, they had to go among their relatives in Alexandria, Egypt. It doesn't tell you that, but it just says Egypt. So now, let's say Alexandria, Egypt didn't exist and they just went among the Africans. How can you hide a white man, Joseph, and a white woman, Mary, and a white baby? How you gonna hide them among black Africans? Because they weren't white people. They were black. They looked like Africans. However, there was interaction between Israelites and Africans, and that did happen, especially Egyptian, Nubians, and Cushites. Some individuals of African descent are mentioned in the Bible. Example given, the Cushite wife of Moses. And they'll say, oh, well, Moses was a white man, but he got with a black woman. No. Moses was a so-called black man that got with a black woman that was from another nation. And the reason why the Most High set Moses up to get with that woman so that he could meet the woman's father, Jethro. So, because he was a tribesman. Because Moses didn't know how to lead the people. So what he taught him was make captains. Captains of tens, captains of 50s, captains of hundreds. He didn't know how to lead the people. It says modern interpretations. There are movements such as the Hebrew Israelites or black Hebrew Israelite groups that believe that, well, we don't just believe it. We have the evidence is out there. The receipts are out there that believe that ancient Israelites were originally black and that modern day descendants of enslaved Africans in the Americas are the true descendants. Well, read Deuteronomy 28. Read the part with the curses from the 15th verse on down. These beliefs are not supported by mainstream history or geneticists. Yeah, because they're Edomites. They want to keep that lie going. Because if they were to say, yes, the African Americans are Israelites, then you'd have to ask the question, well, who are them people over there in Israel today? Which we call the small hats. But they are important. But they are important in the context of identity, spirituality, and the legacy of the African diaspora, which is the Israelite diaspora. Summary: ancient Israelites were likely Middle Eastern in appearance. And Jake don't look like black Africans. A lot of Jakes look like they can pass for Arabs. Hell, I look like I can pass for an Arab. How many times you see an Arab and you think he's a Puerto Rican or even a Dominican till he opened up his mouth with that Middle Eastern accent? Not sub-Saharan Africans. Well, later they did. The Israelites were sub-Saharan Africans because they went down there. They were fleeing from the Romans. They lived in a region with diverse ethnic interactions, including with African peoples. And some of us did marry among the Africans. You have the case with the woman, the Israelitess woman, I believe her father was Dan, that had a child by an Egyptian. And remember, he blasphemed the name of the Most High. So they had the council. The Most High told Moses, what will we do about this man? Put him to death because he blasphemed my name. Some modern groups believe Israelites were black for spiritual, cultural, or identity reasons, but this is not a mainstream historical view. When it says mainstream historical view, it's talking about the view of Europeans. That's why they'll never say that we are the people. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say shalom. On to the next.